You are listening to The Art of Sales. Everyone sells every day, and this is your source for conversational, real-world sales and prospecting methods that you are comfortable using and that get results. You'll help people buy instead of pushing them into being sold. Here's your host, Art Subcheck.
I've got a multiple choice question for you. Guess who says the following? Hi, I'm just calling to check in with you. Well, choice A would be parolees out on probation checking in with their probation officer. Choice B would be sales reps who call customers or prospects and really can't come up with anything more creative or interesting to say. C would be teenage girls every 2 hours on the weekend calling their overprotective and worried parents. Or D, all of the above. Well, the answer is D. And what we're going to concern ourselves with, though, today, of course, will be the sales situation. And that is the sales rep who can't think of anything, again, more creative to say than, I'm just checking in with you. And I jokingly call that the probation officer approach. Or we can also call it something else, the baseball opening, which is, I'm just calling to touch base with you. And let's put it in context. Normally, these calls are made by sales reps who call regular customers on a regular basis, or if maybe they're calling a prospect and placing a follow-up call to someone that they spoke with or met with previously, and maybe it was just kind of a lukewarm prospect. So what's wrong with these calls? Well, really, when you analyze it, there's nothing of value there, right? Is somebody supposed to get excited simply because a sales rep called them to check in, as if they have nothing better to do than pick up their call? I mean, come on, everyone today is more crazy busy than we've ever been at any point in time. So as salespeople, when we call someone, isn't it just common sense and basic respect that we have something of possible value for them? Of course. So we've got to have a reason for calling. And that reason needs to be something of interest, something of value. And what could that be? Well, let's explore several different things that we can put in our openings here. First of all, I suggest that you search your notes from your previous call or your previous meeting and make that the reason for the call. So here's an example. Hey, Stacy, Ken Jones over here with the Fish Supply. I'm calling to follow up on our last conversation from last November. And at that time, you mentioned you're going to be expanding your salmon operation there in the second quarter, and want to share some information with you about what another customer of mine did to keep his expansion costs low and increase his capacity. Okay, so what did I do there? Well, I simply used my history. I used my notes from the previous contact. I always say the success of the follow-up call is in direct relation to the success of the previous contact and what was to happen next. Now, of course, this is predicated on you actually having something of substance that you discussed on the previous contact. And more importantly, if you can, getting a commitment that they're going to do something and you'll do something between now and the next call or the next meeting. Then you can follow up with something like, I'm calling to continue our conversation of last week where we had discussed, then you'd fill in the blank, and you were going to review the numbers I sent you. And I'd like to go through those with you. Oh, and I've got some additional information I believe that you'll find beneficial. So you see, on your follow-up calls, it's important to remember that your prospects are likely not doing pre-call planning like you are. So we can't assume they're in the same frame of mind as we are when our call arrives. That's such a simple point, but I see it. I see the mistakes being made all the time. Actually, if you're going to assume anything, Assume that they probably won't even remember you. Then you're going to make it a point to briefly review where you left the previous conversation. So saying things like, last time we spoke, you'd shown interest in, or I'm calling to continue our conversation from last week where we had discussed and you were going to, and then you're reminding them. All right, now here's another specific way to help you come up with great reasons to call and also to call the right people. So how about this? Let's look at a scenario using something that every company and every individual experiences, and that's change. Let's take a real example. Has your personal or business bank changed names or ownership within the last couple of years? A friend told me that his has changed 3 times. Well, one pretty clever bank sales rep who had been pursuing him manages to contact him after every change. And his calls normally show up when the change is still pretty fresh in his mind. Now, in this situation, he hasn't moved over to the bank yet, but he told me that the timely calls from that sales rep combined with the annoyance of the constant changes are beginning to wear down his resistance. So that's an example of having persistence and not giving up on someone. So let's look at the sales idea and strategy at work here. And you can, of course, use this for a variety of situations. I mean, prospects can be especially vulnerable after, let's say, existing vendors are acquired or merged or undergoes some type of change. Now, taking advantage of this would require some work on your part. It would require you to track a prospect and then be able to sort your database accordingly. So, for example, let's say whatever CRM system that you use, almost everyone allows you to customize fields and sort what's in the fields accordingly. So you could assign a field for, let's say, current vendor. And then what you could do is do a quick sort on all of your prospects who have that vendor's name in the field. And then when, let's say, a change happens with that vendor, you could do that sort, and now you have your list of prospects to call. Now, you're not going to just call and say, I see your vendor was just acquired, and I bet it's a real mess. Now, what we'd want to do here is we'd want to treat the call just like we would a normal follow-up, but we want to be prepared to ask questions to get them to tell you about the possible problems and pains they might be experiencing as a result of the change. So, for example, on that call, you might say, Mike, you're still with AB Supply, is that right? Oh, I see. Okay. Well, with the recent acquisition, some of my other customers have noticed some changes in the promptness of getting their orders delivered. And if that's an issue for you, we've got some options that might be worth taking a look at. What's your experience been? Now, you can use this technique with any number of changes or events that customers or prospects might have some interest in. And that could be a great reason for calling if any of those situations occurred. For example, let's say a prospect told you that if you ever came out with a left-handed adapter for your product, they'd get it in a minute. So then what we do is we would put left-handed adapter in our notes. And if and when your company introduced that, you simply do a search on that term. And now you got a great list to call with a great reason for calling. All right, let's look at another way to avoid just checking in or just touching base. And that's to create your list of value-added points, or I call them VAPs. And these are simply pieces of information or news that someone would say, oh, well, that's good to know. So how do you do this? Well, all this requires is a little brain power. Seriously, it is that simple. It could be industry news. It could be a change that would affect their account. It could be advance notice of a promotion you're going to be running. It could be a congratulations call. It could be a happy birthday call. It could be about some resources that your company offers that they're not now taking advantage of. For example, one of my clients offers regular educational webinars on how to take advantage of the many functionalities of their software that many people underutilize. So they call about those. You have these value-added points already that are in your company. You just need to take them off the shelf, dust them off, and uncover them. Here's what I do when I work with clients in training workshops, and we're working on how to never place the just checking in call again. What we do is we break up into teams and we have a little competition, and I give them only 15 minutes. And I say, what we're going to do is I want you to come up with as many possible reasons for calling that would be perceived as having value as possible in 15 minutes. We're going to make it a competition. And I think that's the key to really get the competitive juices flowing. So you could do the same thing, or you could just do it by yourself. And there aren't many rules here. The only rule is that it can't be just about a product itself, and it can't be about the features of a product. If it is going to be about a product, it's got to be about the result of the product. And it also needs to be able to fit into the opening statement, which would be, "Hi, Mike, this is Art. The reason for the call is," and that would be your value-added point. And I got to tell you, every time we do this without fail, we come up with 20 to 40 great reasons for calling. And that could be an entire year's worth of reasons for calling that would be perceived as having some potential value. And really, your goal is you want your customers and prospects to say, wow, every time he or she calls, they always have something of value for me. Not, oh, he's calling again to see if I have an order ready. Okay? So I've given you 3 ways to avoid placing that probation officer just checking in or the baseball just touching base call. The only reason to make that call, unless you actually have a probation officer, is a lack of creativity or work on your part. So use these ideas and you're going to go further with these prospects and customers. All right, do you know what time it is?
Your attitude will be never will, never feel what they say. It's the art of the sales quote of the day.
That's right. The quote of the day. And today's quote of the day ties in nicely with what we just discussed. And this quote comes from speaker and trainer Patricia Fripp. And Patricia says, "It is not your customer's job to remember you. It is your obligation and responsibility to make sure they don't have the chance to forget you." Let me repeat that. It's not your customer's job to remember you. It's your obligation and responsibility to make sure they don't have the chance to forget you. All right, if you're getting value from this show, I've got a favor to ask, several favors actually. Subscribe so that you're notified of all new episodes automatically. Also, if you're on iTunes, would you please leave a 5-star rating and a brief review? Those are so important to get other people to find out about the show. Also, please post this on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, wherever you visit, and share this link, theartofsales.com, theartofsales.com. And I also have a free ebook for you, 501 sales tips at smartcalling.com, smartcalling.com. All right, until next time, go out and make it your best sales day ever. I'm Art Sobczak.